Over the past 3 decades, Windows has been the default gateway to personal computing for hundreds of millions of people. From school computer labs to corporate offices, from gaming setups to government departments, the Windows logo has symbolized productivity, compatibility, and familiarity. But something subtle has been happening in the background. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. There are no massive headlines declaring the end of Windows dominance. Instead, there is a quiet, gradual, almost invisible migration taking place. The silent shift away from Windows has started, and most people don't even realize they are part of it. For years, Microsoft Windows maintained its grip because it was the safe choice. Software was built for it. Hardware manufacturers optimized for it. IT departments standardized on it. If you bought a PC, it almost certainly ran Windows. Alternatives existed, of course, but they were niche. Apple's macOS appealed to creative professionals and loyal brand enthusiasts. Linux attracted developers and hobbyists. ChromeOS was once dismissed as a browser in a box. Yet today, the landscape looks very different. The shift is not about one competitor overthrowing Windows. It is about the fragmentation of computing itself. One of the biggest forces driving this shift is the rise of device diversity. 10 years ago, the primary computing device for most people was a Windows laptop or desktop. Today, smartphones and tablets dominate daily screen time. For many users, especially younger generations, their first and primary computing experience is not Windows at all. It is Android or iOS. They do homework on Google Docs through a browser. They edit videos on mobile apps. They communicate through platforms that are operating system agnostic. Windows is no longer the center of their digital universe. Another factor is the rise of the web as the platform. Modern web applications have evolved far beyond static pages. Tools like Google, Workspace, Figma, Canva, Notion, and countless SaaS platforms operate entirely in the browser. They run on Windows, macOS, Linux, and even ChromeOS with equal efficiency. When your workflow lives in the cloud, the underlying operating system becomes less important. The browser becomes the real operating system. In this environment, Windows loses one of its historic advantages: exclusive access to critical software. Gaming, long considered Windows' strongest fortress, is also evolving. While Windows still dominates PC gaming, consoles and cloud gaming services are reducing dependence on a Windows machine. Services like Xbox Cloud Gaming and NVIDIA GeForce now allow users to stream high-end games to low-powered devices. You no longer need a powerful Windows PC to play demanding titles. Even Valve's Steam Deck, powered by a Linux-based system, has demonstrated that gamers are open to non-Windows ecosystems if the experience is seamless. Corporate environments are also changing. For decades, IT departments standardized on Windows because enterprise software and Active Directory infrastructure were deeply integrated with it. But now, cloud-based identity systems, SaaS enterprise tools, and cross-platform collaboration apps are replacing traditional Windows-centric setups. Many startups today operate entirely on macOS, or even mixed device fleets. Remote work has accelerated this trend. When employees work from home and rely on cloud-based tools, the strict requirement for Windows diminishes. Education is another silent battleground. Schools around the world are increasingly adopting Chromebooks due to their low cost, centralized management, and simplicity. Students who grow up using ChromeOS may not develop the same attachment to Windows as previous generations. They learn to rely on browser-based tools rather than desktop applications. Over time, this familiarity shapes preferences. When these students enter the workforce, they are comfortable with alternatives. Then there is the hardware revolution. Apple's transition to its own silicon fundamentally changed performance expectations in laptops. Long battery life, silent operation, and powerful performance per watt reshaped consumer perception. Windows laptops have improved significantly, but the competition has intensified. Consumers are more willing than ever to consider alternatives if the experience feels better integrated. Meanwhile, ARM-based Windows devices are still finding their footing, and compatibility questions linger. Privacy and user control also play a role. A segment of users feels uncomfortable with telemetry, advertising integrations, and account requirements in modern versions of Windows. This has driven some toward Linux distributions that emphasize transparency and customization. Linux is no longer the intimidating command-line-linely system it once was. User-friendly distributions with polished interfaces have lowered the barrier to entry. While Linux still holds a small desktop market share, its growth in developer communities is significant. Developers often choose macOS or Linux because of Unix-based environments that align more closely with server infrastructure. Another subtle factor is subscription fatigue. Windows itself may not be subscription-based in the traditional sense, but the ecosystem increasingly pushes services like Microsoft 365. Some users perceive this as part of a broader shift toward recurring payments. Meanwhile, open-source alternatives and free cloud tools offer viable paths without ongoing costs. The perception that computing is becoming service-locked encourages exploration of other platforms. Artificial intelligence may accelerate the shift further. As AI assistants become integrated across devices and platforms, the operating system becomes less visible. If your workflow revolves around an AI layer that operates in the cloud, it matters less whether your device runs Windows, macOS, or Linux. The intelligence resides elsewhere. The device becomes a portal rather than a platform. However, it is important to understand that this shift is not a collapse. Windows still holds a dominant share of the desktop market globally. Enterprises, gamers, and millions of everyday users rely on it daily. The change is gradual. It is about erosion at the edges, rather than a sudden upheaval. Market share statistics may show small percentage declines, but the cultural centrality of Windows is what is shifting most noticeably. In developing markets, affordability plays a crucial role. Low-cost Android tablets and smartphones often replace traditional PCs entirely. For many households, there is no Windows device at all. Work, communication, banking, and entertainment all happen on mobile devices. This mobile-first reality reduces the necessity of owning a Windows computer. Over time, habits form around mobile ecosystems rather than desktop ones. Even in professional creative industries, where Windows once competed strongly, macOS has maintained a powerful presence. Video editors, designers, musicians, and developers often cite ecosystem integration and optimized hardware-software synergy as reasons for choosing alternatives. Cross-platform creative tools ensure that collaboration remains smooth, regardless of operating system. Cloud computing also shifts computational power away from the local machine. Developers spin up Linux servers in the cloud. Data scientists work in browser-based notebooks. Businesses deploy web-based dashboards accessible from any device. The more computing moves to the cloud, the less critical the local operating system becomes. Windows is no longer the indispensable foundation it once was. There is also a psychological element. Younger users value flexibility and minimalism. They are less tolerant of perceived bloat or complexity. Lightweight systems that boot instantly and stay out of the way feel appealing. ChromeOS capitalized on this by offering simplicity over legacy compatibility. Linux offers customization and control. macOS offers polished integration. Windows, carrying decades of backward compatibility, sometimes feels weighed down by its own history. Regulatory environments may influence the shift as well. Governments concerned about digital sovereignty sometimes explore Linux-based solutions to reduce reliance on foreign vendors. Public sector experiments with open-source platforms, even if limited, signal that alternatives are viable at scale. While not widespread, these initiatives contribute to a broader narrative that Windows is not the only path. The shift is also visible in developer culture. Many programming tutorials assume macOS or Linux environments. Open-source projects are often tested primarily on Unix-like systems. Package managers, containerization tools, and DevOps workflows frequently integrate more naturally outside of Windows. Although Windows subsystem for Linux has improved compatibility, the perception persists that Windows is adapting rather than leading in certain technical domains. Remote desktops and virtualization add another layer. If you can access a Windows environment through a browser from any device, you may not need Windows as your primary OS. Cloud PCs allow organizations to centralize management, while employees use diverse hardware. This decoupling of hardware and operating system further weakens the traditional Windows stronghold. The silent shift is also about identity. In the past, Owning a Windows PC was simply normal. It was the default. Today, choosing macOS, Linux, or ChromeOS is not unusual. It does not require justification. The social inertia that once favored Windows has diminished. Choice has normalized diversity. None of this means Windows will disappear. Microsoft has demonstrated remarkable adaptability over the years. The company has embraced open source, expanded into cloud services, and integrated AI deeply into its products. Windows continues to evolve. But the era when Windows was synonymous with personal computing is fading. Computing itself has diversified beyond a single platform. The silent shift away from Windows is less about rejection and more about redistribution. Time spent on Windows devices is declining relative to time spent on other platforms. New generations are growing up platform agnostic. Enterprises are adopting hybrid ecosystems. Developers are prioritizing cross-platform compatibility. The gravitational pull of Windows is weaker than it once was. Perhaps the most telling sign is indifference. In the past, new Windows releases generated massive anticipation. Today, operating system updates rarely dominate conversations outside tech circles. Users care more about apps, services, and experiences than about the OS itself. When the operating system becomes invisible, loyalty weakens. In the coming years, this shift may accelerate as AI-driven interfaces abstract away traditional desktop metaphors. Voice commands, contextual suggestions, and cloud-based automation could redefine interaction models. If the core value moves to the cloud layer, local OS competition becomes secondary. The silent shift is not dramatic enough for headlines proclaiming the end of an era. It is gradual, distributed across demographics, industries, and geographies. It is happening in classrooms adopting Chromebooks, in startups issuing MacBooks, in developers installing Linux, in households relying solely on smartphones, and in gamers streaming titles from the cloud. Windows remains powerful, relevant, and deeply entrenched. But it is no longer unchallenged by default. The monopoly of mindshare has fractured. The future of computing looks pluralistic, not singular. And that is what makes this moment significant. Not because Windows is collapsing, but because it is no longer the unquestioned center of gravity. The silent shift away from Windows has started. It moves quietly through browser tabs, cloud dashboards, mobile apps, ARM chips, open source communities, and AI copilots. It is not a revolution. It is an evolution. And like many profound technological changes, it is happening in plain sight, one login at a time.